It's another week in the For Your Reference household, but very excitingly, it is the first time we've ever had a director interview guest curated double feature for the For Your Reference household.
Mm-hmm.
Bow, 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 bow. Maybe I am occupying the dance floor, OT. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I could be so bold. Friends and lovers, if you are following us in a linear time, you would have already listened to the Jordan Peele episode we had in the lead up to the Nope film. In the interview, we did round it off in our For Your Reference segment, and he recommended to double feature Nope with King Kong.
Right.
It's very exciting. We've already recorded our Nope review, which will drop the week after this current episode. And it's very exciting. I think just very quickly, the sequence in which we watched it was Nope, the 1933 King Kong. And then we're going to be watching Nope again when the Nope episode drops. It's fucking wild, OT.
It is.
Again, love and splooshes to all of our friends and lovers. Thank you for joining us and thank you for continuing to support us. We fucking love yous. Let's get on with the show. Friends and scratch and sniff nipple play lovers, welcome back to the For Your Reference podcast. You got your girl Katie
and OT.
Ring the non-discriminating gong for a bargain of 6 natives for 1 blonde. Native superstition, white man should never see.
Yeah.
Or even right at this point, I fucking guess.
Mm-hmm.
Enter the spectacle of racism with the 1933 King Kong film this week. Ooh-hoo-hoo. We can't release much more detail about Nope, but in our Jordan Peele interview that we mentioned, he did actually talk about King Kong and Nope being a spiritual sort of sequel to it. And he also talks about this King Kong film in particular being a spectacle of racism. There's a lot of talk about spectacle in Nope, and that's as much as we will say without obviously spoiling Nope. But here we are today to talk about at least for me, definitely for the podcast, the oldest film that we've covered, OT.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm so sorry for your wonderful life. King Kong was originally the OG of them all, not the Denzel.
King Kong ain't got nothing on me.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Directed by Marion C. Cooper, who, according to IMDb trivia, he wrote the Arabian proverb himself.
Mm-hmm.
Also, for directing credits, we have Ernest B. Shustak, and in way of cast, we have Fay Wray, Robert Armstrong, Bruce Cabot, Frank Ragnar, as well as Sam Hardy.
Woohoo!
More like yay. Spoiler. Pervy Kongy.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, friends and lovers. We're not entirely sure what the traction will look like. We're assuming everyone is super nasty and they've been splooshing at our Paul Bettany altar. In the For Your Reference podcast, if you are new to our podcast, welcome. It is a safe space, but it's also a place of growth. So you may be challenged, and you also would have gotten a sample tasting platter of that in the description that I wrote for this particular episode. But let's get into first impressions, OT. There's obviously some tasty, some very controversial sort of themes that I want to get into as well. But you know, we've kind of dabbled in the kaiju Kong crossover world of it all. So we are privy to the concept of King Kong and all of the pop culture sort of references as well. But we are new to the 1933 film. So I would love to just hear your general, and we've already mentioned spoilers, but just generally, how did you feel before the film, throughout the film, and even just digesting on the morsels now?
I sort of knew it existed. Well, not sort of. I knew it existed. I just didn't really bother watching it. I think it's one of those things that, you know, a lot of the older films where I know there's gotta be some shit and I don't need to expose myself to.
Asterisk racism. You're saying shit, but you mean racism.
And it was just one of those things I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm better for it not knowing. It's spanned a whole sort of Kong versus Godzilla and all that shit afterwards that we enjoy now. So that's as far as I got with it. I think watching it now, I could see where Jordan Peele was coming from. And I understand that it was the sign of the times. So I'm not going to sit back and also, be super judgy. But
I love how you're intensely looking at me while you say that. Tell me more about how you want to control my body and my voice, OT.
I just know you have feelings. I have feelings. But I'll always try and sort of contextualize shit. While watching this, I could see a lot of the undertones, not even undertones. Some shit was just implicit.
Yeah.
And
you mean the dark skin tones?
Yeah. And I just couldn't be for it. But as a whole, I think a lot of the enjoyment that we got was just from the ridiculousness. There's a lot of fun to be had with this movie. I think we can delve deeper into all that. I don't know how much I can reveal in the first impression sort of view, but that's how I felt.
Okay, nice. If it wasn't because colonization, if it wasn't because capitalism, the idea of studying film is so appealing to me. Like, I would love nothing more than to sit and watch films and digest it. And I guess in some sort of offering, that's what this podcast is. By no means is it learned, but by all means, it's super nasty, and we absolutely enjoy it. And we really get into, a lot of the themes that are presented. And, I do feel justified in the Nope episode that is coming out, but obviously I won't mention it here. But I do get frustrated with the state of Hollywood. And I guess because big media, because big things and big profits, like, I understand it is a business, but also what that means is continuing to wear skin that isn't yours, and maybe even literally, because they keep calling them natives. I think we can agree we're talking about Black people, right? Well, they call them natives, but there are a couple of roosters in the coop. And when you go onto IMDb, they might be native to somewhere else, to the land of milk and honey, possibly. But, as much as I fantasize about being a student of film, I kind of feel like maybe it's a good thing that I had to have independence very young, and, obligations and bills and general sort of survival kind of stopped me from the possibility of studying film. Because if these are the tent poles of films that you would study, which I imagine you would be, I would be close fist fighting everybody. I would be fucking Russell Crowe with Tugger. I'll be doing a world tour of Spectacles of Racism, punching motherfuckers in the mouth.
Wow.
Wow. Like, I had a physical reaction to watching this film, and I felt physically uncomfortable in a lot of the scenes. I will say, generally, if I can get Friends and Lovers, if there's like a supercut of the OG 1933 King Kong film minus the natives, I would rewatch that daily. Because there's a lot of love for the art of filmmaking, which is very clear in this film. The dialogue is also very fun as well. Even very early on in the film, again, before the introduction of the natives, there was a lot of, sort of storytelling points that were very interesting, and even the dialogue was interesting. And I really like the way that the film was laid out. And perhaps you could talk about limitations of filmmaking at the time, but I also feel like a lot of like films in the last couple of decades kind of get caught up in that, who gave Michael Bay a drone sort of filmmaking. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's nice to be able to just focus on whatever the story is going to be. And I guess that's kind of where we've come in way of accessibility, in way of innovation, James Cameron innovation, Jake Sully with his whole ass looking at the other white people and being like, you aliens will never understand. Like, I understand that it's great that we have the availability to make films, but I also feel like something got lost along the way between the OG King Kong and just general filmmaking now that gets so caught up. And I thought it was quite interesting. You know, we have our Carl Wenham, who was kind of holding the bastion. He saw himself as the true martyr of art, even though that wasn't backed up. But at the start of the film, he talked about how he'll do anything to get the perfect shot, right?
Yeah.
That's what he said. His actions didn't reflect that later in the film. But you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of love for what was going on. I just hate that it was hampered by the very real wanting to dabble in, you know, portrayal of people and experiences that aren't your own. But we're absolutely going to get to those themes. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting because I really enjoyed so much of this film, but then there were also moments, and it also takes me back to Friends and Lovers. We do have an episode on the Godfather trilogy, even though personally in my for your reference curriculum, I only regard the first two films as the trilogy. Like Godfather, there's no arguing, is a beautiful offering to the tapestry of world cinema. But there were absolutely moments, especially in regards to Black people, with the dialogue. It was more so the dialogue as opposed to the portrayal that, like in King Kong, for example. But you know what I mean? And it's like, you kind of have to ignore those moments. But also, you know, it's been a couple of years that we've been in the film review, film podcast, film criticism space, and it is very white, right? But also at the same time, whether it's white or not, there are so many themes, especially racial sort of themes, or even to do with sexuality or any sort of marginalization, that people are just like eating around the clit of truth.
Wow.
No, really. Like Friends and Lovers, if you listen to other film podcasts, indie or otherwise, go and listen to The Godfather and see if they ever mention like the treatment or the perception that the Italian family has on Black people. I really don't think, unless it's like a Black or a POC podcast, I don't know if that will be mentioned because it is quite minimal. So you can just shrink into your seat and then wait for it to go away and then surface back up again and enjoy all of the frivolity in Godfather. So I'm coming from that baseline because we are very much, if we're going to talk about it, we're going to fucking talk about it.
Yeah, I hear you.
So let's get into the themes that we have. The first theme that I have here is the evolution of storytelling in Hollywood. And I guess I'll give a bit of a background in what I mean about that, but I kind of want to have a little bit of discussion in regards to, again, marginalized people. But if we're just talking about race specifically, in this film in particular, in the 1930s or in 1933 specifically, if we're talking about King Kong, we have, you know, really, again, quality in regards to white characters. And then when there's any introduction of non-white, and in this case, because I really feel like it was only the Asian character that said the word Black. Everyone else kept saying native, right? So if there was any but we're talking about Black, but native, or however you want to reference it in this King Kong film, it's a very offensive portrayal of it.
It is.
Even as a Pacific Islander, I felt offended by the portrayal of Black people in this film. So, you know, and for those that are more privy to this particular time of cinema, surely it's not that hard to pick up other offensive portrayals of, I'll just focus on Black people, right? Then we move into, it's not necessarily an offensive portrayal. Perhaps maybe Black people are being seen as more human. So now we move into like the white savior sort of complex, right? I literally just mentioned Jake Sully in Avatar. If you think about The Help, if you think about Sandra Bullock's
Blindside.
Yes. You know, there's so many examples you can think of with the white savior complex. And perhaps that was a way of still being able to write about Black characters, but centering it. And I'm so sorry, Viggo Mortensen. Why didn't I even just mention Green Book? That
Because we'll not speak about that movie in this household.
It's OT's Voldemort. Absolutely. But you see what I mean? Like, and obviously Passion of the Christ, go and check out our Passion of the Christ episode. But you see what I mean? Like it's still including Black characters from like white writers and white directors. And it's not done in that offensive way, but it's still centering whiteness.
Yeah.
And now we come into, if I can borrow a term from Issa Rae's rap shit, we're coming into like a black excellence renaissance right now. No, really, we're seeing like ownership, and it's not that the ownership was never there. It was that was never allowed to, right? There's so much first black to win this, to win that, but it's more the inability for the current establishment to relinquish their superiority in that space.
Yeah. And to me, I think the sort of, and I accept there's this renaissance, black excellence and whatnot, but also we've been watching recently Everything is Trash, where they sort of covered that aspect of it as well. Where, cool, as a young black person, you don't need to fucking be the first of everything to feel like you've accomplished something.
Yeah.
Or to feel that you have to go above and beyond to feel as if you're portraying that black excellence, or that's what you're striving for.
Yeah.
You can just be you, bruv.
Yeah.
Everything in the fucking world wants you to be some sort of fucking excellent persona for you to be recognized, or at least seen in a space where otherwise you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And for me, this movie, when I watched the portrayal of black people in it, it felt so jarring.
Yeah. But that was interesting because near the start of the film, I was telling you how uncomfortable I was. And I said, it's inevitable. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. But I feel uncomfortable by this. Do you? And you said no.
I wasn't uncomfortable because I've seen this shit before. It's more the comments that they were made afterwards. So the portrayal was one thing, that I could probably just lock in a box somewhere behind my fucking head.
But can I also point out that you shouldn't need to?
I shouldn't need to, fine. But it was one of those things, cool, you know what? Fuck it. Let's roll with it. And then it's one of those offhand comments that get me, And soon afterwards, because I was fine with the portrayal. Like, I was not fine. Like, I contextualized
like
that
you
shit.
knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. And I moved past it. And then the first comment that they made was, oh, how about we trade 6 of our black women for your blonde girl? I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That just took me out of the movie. It took me out of the movie because I could not understand the fucking gall to write that shit.
OT was fighting.
People be battling out here, and then you have someone coming up and writing some shit like that.
Yeah.
That took me out of the movie for a bit, and I had to sort of compose myself to continue watching it because, I knew that we had to record this podcast afterwards. Ideally.
Jordan Peele made it a double feature, so of course we're going to oblige.
Yes.
And it makes a lot of fucking sense for Nope.
In a normal OT world, I would have stopped that shit right there. The portrayal be fucking damned. I'm used to seeing that shit. It's not right. But we've seen it before.
Yeah.
It's just the disrespect.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for it. That took me aback. I was like, okay, cool. Took me out of the movie. I had to continue sort of watching it from an outer body experience.
Yeah.
And then we get into this moments where Kong comes back to the village and he's fucking brutal.
Yeah.
He's more brutal than he was. Like, we've seen a scene where 12 random white guys died.
Yeah.
And it was horrific. We saw it, like, being shaken off fucking logs.
Yeah.
And then he comes into the village and takes it up a notch.
Well, I think what he did was, like, we didn't see the white people die on screen, even though they did say later on that 12 of the crew died. But, if we're doing maths, my native count might equate for more. But anyway.
Well, we did see them fall heights that, of course, they're dead. It's not that we didn't. We were shown. We were shown and it was fine. I saw that it was horrific.
But I guess
what I'm going with is it's the extent to which Kong upped his.
It's the grisliness, and it's the reminder that the one yielding the pen is not the native people. The one yielding the pen is, and I think that's what was hard for me to not disassociate was the way that they all sounded. Because remember, we're talking about the 1930s. They all talk like this, see? So they were like literal mustache twirling villains, and they were going through all of this. And I guess we also need to keep in mind, as much as it is a film, as much as it is a story, this was written by people that weren't being portrayed in such brutalized ways. So when Kong goes hard for these black people when he like it reminds me very much, and I would love to know if Quentin Tarantino is a fan of this film, of the dynamicisms between Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained. Because Inglourious Bastards, we did see, you know, a lot of like even heads get scalped, for example, but it wasn't personalized to the characters. And then you compare it to the way our guy in Django,
Dr. Onion,
was, not only did he die, but he died through brutalized means. And it's like, what do you get out of this? And I couldn't help, like, even when Kong was like, after he had like a native in his mouth, that made me very uncomfortable. That visual made me very uncomfortable in ways that maybe my ancestors can only explain.
At the back of my mind, I was like, he better fucking do that with a fucking white person.
And he did. And he did.
And that fucking clapped. So
no, but even when he was squashing another native, you know, with his foot, and friends and lovers, I hope me using the word native a lot makes you unfucking comfortable, because it fucking should, and we need to fucking talk about this. But even when he was squashing a native with his foot, that's when it reminded me of Django. Because the brutal ways in which, you know, the black people were dying in Django, it's like, what's the point of this? And if we can just capture off like storytelling in Hollywood, you know, we did finish a stint in our reference degustation, and Jordan Peele will be our honorary reference degustation, because we've covered Get Out, Us, and also Nope coming up as well. So we've covered all of his films, which is very cute and very exciting. Like, I will go back to the sentiments that I shared throughout our reference degustation of Quentin Tarantino. As much as it is frustrating for Quentin Tarantino to make the decisions that he made, talk about the fact that, you know, Pulp Fiction, Django Unchained, was commercially more successful than Jackie Brown. His earnest attempt at humanizing black characters with Pam Grier, right? So it is a push and pull. I also feel like as an audience, we do have power and also responsibility, you know, to call to account the custodianship of that martyrdom of artistry, the Wenhams of the world, right?
Yeah. And I do agree with that. I think just seeing I think it was two black villages being stomped to the ground, and those, you know, they pan in, they focus on it, you see them struggling into the fucking mud. Yeah. I'm like, bruh. Like,
it's like every possible situation of black suffering was in that film.
Yeah. And to take the offensive portrayal, like, the portrayal is one thing that I, in my mind, didn't really focus too much on. Then we end up in the theater where we get a lot of, because if you thought that they weren't talking about black people throughout, it becomes quite clear that they actually fucking were.
Thank you.
Because up until then, you could make an argument that, it's animals. It's
ignorance, whatever. We don't need to, we can separate it. It's just a film, bro.
It's just a film, bro. But in that theater, the comments made makes it fucking 100% clear what they fucking meant.
Yeah, especially that lady about the gorilla comment. Yeah.
We already have enough gorillas in New York running the city. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. And it's like, you're okay. So this is a theme that I want to come into. Who is the true martyr of art? Because I would absolutely say in King Kong, it's black people. And if black people are the martyrs of this art, for Carl Wenham to get his perfect picture, for these people, he's creating art for these stuffy motherfuckers.
Yeah. Because to some degree, like we said, we enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
You can pick apart what we didn't like about it, and you could see a version of this movie that is fucking great.
But why do you feel the need to compliment this film?
I'm not trying to compliment this film. I'm trying to...
Because we do love it, but we can also discuss it.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. That's what we're doing. I'm trying to put myself in a situation where I got offended quite quickly. Like I said, I was about to bow out just based off the comments, you know? Yeah. And that's the most jarring thing for me, that people would watch this and still think that it's some sort of escapism It could be true, but two things can be true as well.
Yeah.
It could be a fucking escapism and just fucking animals and gorillas, but the comics bring it back to fucking reality.
But can we also point out that, and you also bring a really great melding of the two worlds, because this is a great film. And, again, if we're talking about innovation, if we're talking about filmmaking, there's a lot of craft and there's a lot of care, not to the natives, but there was a lot of care that went into this film, which I absolutely agree with. But there's such a stark sort of heavy-handedness in its offensive portrayal of Black people. And I don't think there's anything wrong with mentioning that as well.
No, there's not.
Because if you can watch this film and say it's the greatest fucking film, then power to you, my friend and lover. But some of us can't watch films like this and not see it. And I think that goes back to Nope. Like, some of us can't watch King Kong and giggle when the Asian character has to listen to stupid Anne being like, oh, isn't life wonderful? Like, some of us can't think about, oh, wow, what an innovation to be able to get Kong's mouth to crunch on that native. Like, some of us don't have the luxury of taking off all of our identity to be able to applaud, like in that cinema with that stupid lady talking about gorillas in New York. Some of us don't have that luxury. And what I am saying is maybe we need to get in the rooster coop, OT, because sometimes we need to be able to be in the space too.
Yeah, I hear you.
And, like just to capture off who is the true martyr of art, when we're talking about, having themes or also characters that are central to the plot, that have experiences that are not by those that are creating the stories, there needs to be some sort of respect. There needs to be some sort of custodianship in the way that they portray it. Again, I know we're talking about the 1930s, but I talk about the White Lotus a lot, the Green Book. Like, there's so many examples that are very, very recent where it's like, you should be knowing better. In the 2010s, absolutely. Even in the 1990s. But anyway, you should be knowing better in the way that you write experiences for characters that aren't fucking yours. And if you keep writing about experiences that aren't yours, get out of the fucking way, because there are many talented screenwriters and creators that are there to write that. Write about your own shit. Or I guess write about where the crawdads sing with that lady in being incriminated. But I also talked about it in Nope, so I'm not going to mention it now. But if we talk about the true martyrs of art in King Kong 1933, like you said, if you wanted to pick it up, you picked it up immediately from the comment that you cringed at and that you felt that visceral sort of offense to, right? Or you wait all the way to the end of the film premiere, but if you don't get it by the end of the film, there's really nothing else to say, to be perfectly honest. But there was so much tension in every facet of my debilitating body when you have this film crew, and perhaps it is a microcosm of colonization. Perhaps it is just Hollywood as a vessel, but you have this film crew that happen upon these natives that are minding their fucking business, man.
Yeah. I was just leave Kong alone. Let him be.
I wasn't even talking about Kong. I was just talking about the natives specifically, but also
Kong and the natives.
Friends and lovers. Harrison Ford, well beloved in this household, but not the 12-year-old kid, not the actress, but the actual kid in Air Force One. And I have a lot of time. I have a lot of time to hold white people to account that want to bring their whole ass, stop treating people like they're animals in a zoo.
Mm-hmm.
And to even further, use animals in a zoo to portray other people. It's high time we get over that fucking shit. But you're right. Like, Kong was just minding his business. And can I also point out as well, for a lot of native and indigenous people, there was a symbiotic understanding with all life. Everything that breathed life into the land, there was a symbiotic nature between people, animals, and the life around us. So that's as much as I will say with that. Before we move on to other themes, I do have a very quick question for you.
Yeah.
There's no right answer, but to you, I pose this question. How do we view outdated themes in older films with a 2020 lens? How do you think it should be watched?
with context. I think with everything, you have to put context around it. Otherwise, it just loses fucking meaning. And you could get super angry super quickly. I think with everything, well, times have changed. So a lot of things have happened that weren't possible or wasn't possible back then. So I think you just have to contextualize a lot of shit. Otherwise, mate, fucking lose your mind.
I agree with that. I guess the way I view it is like, you know how you have like older relatives, maybe even your grand or your great, parents.
Or your soul food pasta.
Your soul food pasta. I don't know what perverted angle you're going down. But no, like you have older relatives or like older people like that are your loved ones in your close circles in your life that there's no point bringing up particular issues with, whether it be race, whether it be sexuality. It's not to say that they're necessarily a bad person. They might love you, but you don't bring up race. You don't bring up your ethnic friends like when you're talking to your grandparents. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I see this film. But what's very interesting about this is, when the film first started, there was obviously a lot of misogynistic comments that were being made. Even Carl wasn't necessarily a fan about bringing on, a female sort of cast member, but he also acknowledged that the public need a pretty face. Right. So, but there was a lot of misogynistic comments that were made, especially from Driscoll, which maybe this is the OG sort of the guy that is absolutely a misogynistic dick, but she falls in love with him anyway. Like maybe that's where the formula came about, which I don't understand irony. I don't know irony, but, Carl was talking about how there doesn't need to be, or it cheapens, having a love story, but they ended up having one in this film anyway. Perhaps someone smarter than I can articulate that 2 words. But yeah, it was interesting because the misogynistic stuff, I was like, you know what? I'm more mad now that films still have that similar theme. You know what I mean? Like films made in the last couple of decades still have that theme. So I was absolutely fine. It wasn't until we came to Black people and the natives that I started to feel umbrage, that I started to want to hold it to account with my 2020s lens.
And I hear you. It's hard not to. Especially when it's so fucking obvious. I think a lot of the times that I battled with it was, like I said, the comments, which the depiction, it's sort of things that you've seen before. It's not new. It's not right either. Yep. It's not right, but it's not new.
Yeah.
So I'll just go back to that, man. Like it's...
Even the comment about saying that the natives weren't used to, or they weren't familiar with gunpowder. Like, come on, the colonial tones were there was that Roy Wood Jr. colonial residue. It's just, again, friends and lovers, I guess you could claim ignorance, but absolutely by the time they get to the premiere, like you need to acknowledge it at that. Something that I just wanted to capture off before we get into a light theme to finish off this review, friends and lovers, is I would urge all of you, if you're not familiar with Emmett, to do some research on Emmett Till. The reason why I mentioned that is, again, this was made in the 1930s. I even, we had a quick sort of debrief after watching the film, and I said to you, there's been so many Kong variations, recently within the last couple of decades, and it's interesting that they still chose for a gorilla to have the eye of affection of a white blonde woman. Like, to me, that felt so outdated. If there was anything that they could change, it should be that, because historically, again, go and research Emmett Till, but historically, there is absolutely a conversation to be had about Black men and white women. And that's as much as I'm going to get into that. But I just wanted to have a note with that. Also, friends and lovers, a note that I made here is what people don't realize is that Black people were demeaned as the OG circus freaks.
Yeah.
Because there was that particular scene where Kong was all chained up at the premiere and they were all flashing and taking photos. That was another scene that gave me physical discomfort.
Symbolism, bruv.
symbolism, but that's why I wanted to make that note, because you think of like bearded ladies and all that sort of shit, but what people don't realize is just people because they're black were being used and carted around as the OG sort of circus freaks, so to say, being so demeaned, having their bodies studied and that sort of thing. So another Googling that I will urge you friends and lovers to check out is Sarah Bartman.
Mm-hmm. Next time you go to a museum, you see a fucking remains of a dead person, think twice, bro.
I didn't care for Killmonger. Friends and lovers, Black Panther was our first episode, and we're excited to watch Wakanda Forever. Well, I don't know if excited is the word, but we're definitely looking forward, and we will be front row seats, perhaps crying. But Black Panther was our first episode. The only time I related to Killmonger was when he was in the fucking museum. You can't fucking steal shit and then put lines and rules around it, how you can't give it back to people that it actually own it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But again, friends and lovers, Emmett Till, Sarah Bartman, make sure you go and read that. I want to finish off in a theme, our favorite theme, OT, the power hierarchy in this film.
Well, we had Kong battle different sort of monsters, and he had the snake should not even have been a problem for him.
Right?
He struggled with it for like 5 minutes. I'm like, no, you've killed a fucking dinosaur. You've parted its jaws. And then here you are being fucking choked by a bloody snake. Nah, not having it. Not having it at all.
That really bothered you, didn't it?
It did. Why struggle that much when we've just seen how capable you are of fighting stronger animals or creatures? No, it has to make sense.
Maybe he needed more native juice to power up,
Maybe so.
Maybe he was running low.
Yeah, it was wild. I just wanted it to be to make more sense. And I think the saddest part for me with Kong as well in this is how great it is, how strong it is. Everything you've witnessed in him, in his native, in his fucking kingdom.
Yeah,
you can see that it's just fucking glorious. And to take him away and put him in fucking chains, and to then
he doesn't belong there.
And then the end, I think that's one of the worst endings I've seen in a movie for me personally.
Yeah.
Not only is it that Kong dies, but the comment at the end, the role,
I actually wrote it down. Would you like to read it?
White people.
I actually wrote it down. Would you like to read the closing line?
It wasn't the airplanes that killed him. It was beauty that killed the beast. Vomit.
Literally, fuck off.
You know what killed him? You motherfuckers.
Yeah.
You took him out, brought him here, and then what? He's fucking in love with a white woman.
Yeah.
And he has to fucking fiddle her. What was that scene? Let's talk about that for a second.
Well, I don't have anything else to say in regards to power hierarchy, aside from potential having our first Gojira and Kong fight. But let's end with that, actually. The scratch and sniff nipple play.
I don't think I've ever been confused in my life.
If I may borrow a phrase from Russ in Silicon Valley, King Kong fucks. He absolutely fucks.
Oh, man.
Don't neglect the nipple play. Friends and lovers, this is a King Kong KT collaboration. Stop eating around the clit of truth and don't neglect the nipple play.
Mm-hmm.
Get some sniffing in. You need to get something off for yourself too. But don't neglect the nipples, friends and lovers.
Yeah, I just did not. I think I did not expect that. It blew my mind.
Wild.
Man, he was horny as fuck.
He was absolutely, when he was looking in the window, he had a purpose.
Wow. The voyeurism in this.
But I do like that, whether intentional or not, I do like that there were moments of levity, because those really kind of, reset me. I think we were halfway through the film and I'm like, I'm having a good time. Do you think the natives are going to show up one more time? Because if they don't, I think I'll be fine for the rest of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. once we get to nipple play, friends and lovers, there's really nowhere else to go. Usually, we would finish off in a segment we call For Your Reference. However, as bestowed by the ever-eternal, universal, well-beloved Jordan Peelsies, the recommendation and the reference for this week, friends and lovers, is to go and watch Nope.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Go in droves. Enjoy.
And if you happen to listen to this episode before you watch Nope, it's going to be an interesting experience, friends and lovers. If you chose to listen to this episode and you haven't watched King Kong in a while, I would love for you, to maybe not scratch and sniff nipple play, but if you would like to share your thoughts in a timely manner, we would very much appreciate it. For Scratch and Sniff OT Play on Twitter and Instagram, we're at ForYourFPod.
Write us an email at hello@f4podcast.com.
We're also on
King Kong ain't got nothing on me.
Podcast if you like to leave a rating and review. And we'll see you guys with our Nope review.
Woohoo! See ya.
Bye.